If you thought you didn't like pot roast, it's time to think again. No more stringy pot roast. This recipe promises fork tender beef and a rich, full-bodied gravy thanks to red wine, fresh herbs, and a cooking method that never fails. You're gonna start with a 4 to 5 pound chuck roast. And what you're gonna do is pat it dry. Now the reason that we're patting our roast dry is because we wanna get a really good sear. So you wanna remove all the excess moisture. Now it's time to add the seasoning. The seasoning is a mix of kosher salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. And you're gonna add it to one side and rub it in. Add it to the next side and rub it in again, and make sure you get all around the sides too. Now the reason that we're adding seasoning directly to the beef is because we want flavor in every single bite of pot roast, not just in the gravy. We're kind of gonna massage it in there until we know it's really good and adhered to the meat. And then you'll sprinkle with flour. So the flour on the roast itself is also gonna help us to develop that sear and a nice golden brown crust. Once you've prepped your roast, it's time to move on to the veggie prep. I kept the veggie mix for this pot roast really simple. So it's just gonna consist of carrots, onions, and garlic. As you can see, I'm not cutting the carrots super small. I'm leaving them nice and big so we get good bite-sized pieces. Next, we're just gonna dice up a yellow onion. Just a good chunky dice is all you need, nothing too fine. The last thing we're gonna cut up is just a couple of cloves of garlic, but I'm not gonna put them in the same little bowl as these because we're gonna cook them at a different time. So I'm gonna set them off to the side, but go ahead and get my prep out of the way now. This is a Dutch oven. It is my absolute favorite cooking vessel for braising meats. If you're wondering what braising meats means, it's when you cook a cut of meat low and slow, not totally submerged in liquid, but partially covered in liquid. And what this does is it starts to break down those tough muscles, and it'll completely tenderize what is normally a really tough cut of meat, like a beef chuck, into savory fork tender perfection. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you can still make this recipe, but you won't be able to go directly from the stovetop to the oven in one cooking vessel. A quick word on a few other ingredients we're gonna be using for our pot roast. First, for the searing, you're gonna need an oil with a high smoke point. So canola oil, vegetable oil, or my favorite, avocado oil will work great. So this is what we're gonna use to sear our beef and get that really great, golden, beautiful crust going. The next ingredient you wanna keep in mind is all-purpose flour. Just plain all-purpose flour. What this is gonna do is it's gonna help to thicken up our gravy so we don't have to worry about any reduction or anything like that when it comes out of the oven. It'll pop out ready to serve. Speaking of pot roast gravy, I did promise a full flavored, luxurious gravy. So for that, you're gonna wanna have a bold red wine on hand. Bold red wines would be a Malbec, a Cabernet Sauvignon, or even a Chianti. Just pick your favorite bold red and make sure to save a little for a glass after you have assembled the greatest pot roast in the history of the world. Last but not least, beef broth, but not just any beef broth. You must use unsalted beef broth for this recipe. If you use a beef broth that's full of sodium, your pot roast is going to turn out far too salty. So I imagine your next question would be, but what if I have a full sodium beef broth in the pantry? If that's the case, then I would omit all salt from this recipe and instead season to taste. Really, it's better to season as you go when it comes to dishes like this. So if you can, just go ahead and get the low sodium stuff. The first thing you want to do is have your oil heating in the pan. You want it good and hot so that you can get a great sear on that beef. You're gonna sear the meat on every single side. And then once you've developed the crust, take out the beef, transfer it to a plate, and it's time to add the veggies. Add the carrots and the onions and saute until they're all coated in the oil. If you can, get a wooden spoon and scrape up any spare brown bits at the bottom of the pan. Next, you're gonna cover the Dutch oven and we're gonna let the carrots and the onion cook together and soften up. After a few minutes has gone by, you're gonna add the garlic, let that cook for about 1 minute, and then we'll add the flour. Sprinkle in the flour and stir it around so that the veggies are completely coated. Then you'll add your red wine and stir until it's completely mixed in. Next, add the beef broth, salt, and pepper, and let the mixture come to a simmer. Once you hit a simmer, you can go ahead and add the roast back to the pan along with your fresh herbs, rosemary and thyme. Cover it and pop it in the oven. The pot roast is gonna cook at 325 degrees for 3 hours. Once the time is up, it's ready to serve. So make sure that you've got your mashed potatoes, your rice, or your egg noodles ready to go. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a like and go ahead and subscribe while you're at it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.